All right, well, hey, everybody, welcome to Eagle Brook Church. Really good to have you with us today. We are one church meeting in 10 campuses across the Twin Cities and in Rochester as well. We also have viewing groups that meet all throughout the country and really the world. And viewing groups is maybe 10 or 100 or something people who gather to watch the Eagle Brook service. Some of them are in homes, some of them are in public locations like movie theaters. And we just launched a new one in December. I was gonna show you a picture of this. This is in Mesa, Arizona. It's out on someone's back patio. I mean, look at this. They got the fire, the sun's coming through the pergola. What are we doing here? Why are we here? I don't know why we're here. But if you're ever near Mesa, Arizona, and you still want to attend Eaglebrook Church, you have that option. If you're interested in more information, you can check out our website to find out where more viewing groups are. All right, today we are starting, or in the third week rather, of a series called Normal Isn't Working. And we've been asking the question, what's normal today? For a lot of people, it's anxiety and fear. It's busyness and it's stress, it's conflict, it's criticism. Why would we want normal if normal isn't working? Why would we settle for less than God's best just because a lot of other people are? Today's message is titled, My Family. What is normal for families today? I just jotted down a few things that came to my mind. The first one was overcommitted. I mean, many families that I know, you've got both parents who are working, you've got kids who are in school, they all get home, they wolf down some cereal as fast as they can, and they race out the door. And you take Joey to practice, and you get this person to recital, and it's back and forth, and who's driving and who's picking up, overcommitted. Another phrase that I wrote down was experience rich and relationship poor. It's a phrase that Pastor Andy Stanley coined to describe how many kids today are in an experience-rich childhood. They've been to theme parks, they've been to professional sporting events, they've got every game and app that you could ever think of, but relationally, they lack the deep family relationships that provide a sense of confidence and security. Here was another phrase that I wrote down, maybe this is just our family. Irritated with one another. When our family isn't doing well, we are simply irritated with one another. My wife has always had this vision that her family would sing Christmas carols together on Christmas. And I play the guitar a little bit, and so when the kids were younger, I would get the guitar out, and we would sing O Holy Night or What Child Is This? But when my oldest son got to be about 8 or 9, he didn't want to sing anymore. He wanted to join the band. And so I had this bongo drum, this djembe, and he would go down in the basement and he would get it. And so we would be like, Silent Night, and he would, drove me crazy. Every year it just about ruined Christmas trying to sing Christmas carols together. And so finally this year I said to my wife, I said, that's it. Last year was so bad. I said, I am done. I'm going on strike. I will not play the guitar this year. She said, that's fine. I'll just get karaoke carols. I didn't even know this was a thing, but on YouTube, you can fire it up on your TV. They've got Christmas carols, and they've got the lyrics underneath like you're singing karaoke. And so she put this on this year and started singing, Joy to the world, the Lord has come. And then she shot me a look. I was like, Joy to the world, the Lord. But we've got 2 teenagers, and so right away, one of my teenagers was like, turn this off. Another one is like, I am not doing this. 2 of my younger kids started to mock sing, and so here we are singing Joy to the World, but there was no joy. Then my oldest son began to make fun of my wife for her singing, and to her credit, she burst out laughing. And then I kind of nervously laughed, because I was ready to start singing again if need be. But I gave a little nervous laugh, and pretty soon both of us were laughing so hard we were crying. And then our whole family started to sing Joy to the World in not the most reverent way, but there was joy this time. Isn't that how many families work? I mean, one moment you're irritated, you're frustrated, you're just annoyed with one another, get me away from these people. But the next moment is so special that it forms some of the best memories of your life. See, I believe that family is our greatest source of joy. It can also be our greatest source of pain and frustration. My wife, Sarah, and I have been married for 20 years. We have 5 kids, and I would say that for the most part, we have a great family. But it's not been without its difficulties. I mean, through the years, there's been relational tension, there's been slammed doors, there's been temper tantrums, and that's just my wife. With the kids, there's been things as well. There's been arguing and bickering with one another. We've had fights over phones and devices, texting and YouTube. We have had battles over Snapchat and TikTok, Friends and Fortnite, you name it. But despite all of those battles, I believe that family is God's idea. Because when a family is functioning well, there's almost nothing that brings a sense of security and identity to a person's life. When a dad is attentive and engaged, when moms are loving and spiritually grounded, when kids are respectful and obedient, when grandparents offer support and stay engaged, there's almost nothing like a family to provide a person with a sense of security and stability in their life. So today I want to take you to a verse in the Old Testament that talks about family. And even if you're not a real Bible person, you're gonna maybe recognize this verse because it's the kind of verse you see when you walk into someone's house. People will put it on a plaque, they'll stitch it into a pillow. If you look around, you might see this verse. Here it is, Joshua said this, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. As for me and my family, we will serve the Lord." If I were to ask you to describe your house or your family in a word or a phrase, what would you say? And how many of us would use a phrase like, well, as for my family, we serve the Lord? Just to give you a little background on this verse, Joshua was speaking to the entire nation of Israel, and he was laying down the gauntlet. Because look at what he says in the verse right before. He says, "Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshiped beyond the river in Egypt and serve the Lord." When the Israelites were in Egypt, they were slaves, and while they were there, they began to pick up some of the spiritual practices of the Egyptians. Why did they do this? Was it because they read a book and they became convinced that the God of Israel didn't create the world, but the God of Egypt did? No. Did they attend a class at the University of Cairo and become convinced of the truth of the Egyptian gods? And well, no, it wasn't that either. I'll hear people sometimes and they'll talk about how they're deconstructing their faith or walking away from their faith. And oftentimes it's simply because of the people around them, what's normal around them at the time. That's what was happening to the Israelites. They began to worship the Egyptian gods. Egyptians worshiped the moon, they worshiped a sacred cow. Child sacrifice and prostitution were normal forms of worship. But normal wasn't working, and Joshua knew it. Pause here for a moment, because some people might say, well, this is where the Old Testament gets kind of weird. I mean, come on, I'm not gonna worship the moon. I'm not gonna offer a sacrifice to an Egyptian god. This is where the Old Testament just isn't relevant to our lives today. But it is. We may not worship a cow or a moon, but we have our other gods in our American culture. For some people, it's money. I mean, money isn't just something that they make and use and give away. Money is something that drives their life. For some people, it's fame, it's notoriety, it's achievements, it's success, it's being thought well of by other people. For some people, it's politics. A politician or a political party is going to solve all of their problems in life. We may not worship a cow or a moon, but we have our other gods. And so Joshua gets very clear with the nation of Israel. He says, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself. Make a choice, make a decision. This day, whom you will serve. Joshua is saying, commit. Don't say, well, I'm gonna worship God, but I'm also gonna do this. I'm gonna believe in God, but I'm also gonna do this. And I believe that God might be saying that to some of us today. There might be some of us who look at our families and we go, we're Christians, but we also do this. We're Christians, but we also believe this. And I wonder today if God is saying to us very clearly, commit. In fact, let me give you 3 commitments. 3 commitments that if you make, I believe your family will function at its best. And by the way, every one of us is in a family. Even if you don't see your family or if your family's not around anymore, every single person here has a family. Here's 3 commitments to help your family function at its best. The first one is this: work on your own stuff. Families that are at their best are made up of people at their best. Healthy families are made up of healthy people, and healthy people recognize, they're self-aware of their own stuff. Look what it says in Colossians chapter 3. Paul says, get rid of sexual sin, impurity, lust, and greed. Get rid of all anger, rage, and filthy language. I want you to just look at that list with me for just a moment. Is there anything on that list that you would say in your life that you need to get rid of? Not talking about your spouse or your kids or your parents. I'm saying, is there anything on that list in your life that you need to get rid of? Just look at the first few for a moment. Sexual sin, impurity, lust. How many families are destroyed by sexual sin? Too many to count. Affairs, abuse, pornography, they destroy millions of families every single year. If you are struggling with one of those, don't hide it, get rid of it. I'll say to people all the time, it's okay to struggle with sin. Every single human being sins. I sin, you sin. It's okay to struggle with sin. It's okay to struggle with sexual sin. I know that's embarrassing to talk about and to reveal to other people, but everybody, most people, struggle with sexual sin. I have at various points in my life. It's okay to struggle with sexual sin, but here's what's not okay: to keep it hidden. Because when you keep it hidden, that's when it becomes dangerous. Some of us need to read a book, like Every Man's Battle or Every Woman's Battle. Some of us need to set up a meeting with a pastor or a counselor and say, hey, I've got some things in my life that I need to confess and I need to work through this with you. Don't hide it. Get rid of it. Look at the second part of the verse. Paul says, get rid of all anger, rage, and filthy language. You could lump all this together under verbal misconduct. Anyone here today have some verbal misconduct? When my wife and I moved into our most recent house, on about the second weekend of deer hunting season, we were standing in our office, and my wife was kind of looking across the street, and she saw 3 deer. There was a huge buck. It was like a 6-8 point buck. There was 2 does that were with him, and they started to run across the street past our house. And so my wife and I ran into the living room. We said to our kids, you guys, there's 3 deer. They're coming right through our backyard. And so our kids ran up to the window and they're like, oh, wow, boom. Boom. I looked and there was a hunter in full blaze orange standing about 100 yards away, I think on my property. My kids started to go, this was like a Bambi moment playing out right before our eyes, like covering my little kid's eyes. I ran downstairs and I yelled out the window. I said, hey, you're on my property. But he couldn't hear me. He was just blasting away at these deer. And so my wife ended up calling the police. And when the policeman got to our house, I could tell he was a hunter. Because I said to him, hey, this guy was on my property shooting at these deer. And he got really philosophical. He said, yeah, we are a hunter-gatherer species. It's like, what? Go gather at Aldi. They've got some great deals over there if you want to. I was like, you can hunt if you want to, but you just can't hunt on my property. And so I tried to explain to the police officer, I said, yeah, but the hunter's here, the deer's here, my house is here. If he misses the deer, he might hit my house. And the police officer said, yeah, but hunters know that they're responsible for their projectile. I said, well, that's reassuring. I'll remember that when I'm in my grave. Now, in case you're wondering, the 3 deer, I believe, did get away unharmed. And to the best of my knowledge, our previous senior pastor, Bob Merritt, was not involved in any way. Now, isn't that how some of us are with our words? I mean, we just speak first and we think later. So if somebody criticizes us, we unload on them. If someone slights us, even in the littlest way, it's a buckshot of angry words being sprayed in every direction. If we feel like our spouse isn't doing as much work around the house as we are, and it's not fair, boom, we just unload on them. If a hunter is responsible for their projectile, then we are responsible for our projectile as well. We are responsible for our words. The Bible has a lot to say about how we use our words. Proverbs 17 says, the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever is wise is even-tempered. I love this word, restraint. Is there a relationship in your family right now, specifically talking about your family, where you need to pray and ask God, God, give me some restraint when it comes to my words? Maybe it's before you send an email or a text message, you pause and you pray. I mean, I've gotten text messages before that I almost giggle when I read them because I'm picturing the person writing this email and I'm picturing them and they just blast it out there. And I get it, I think, boy, you didn't pause before you sent this. And I'll oftentimes send a nice response back, a gentle response back, and sometimes I'll get a reply, and they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just mad about COVID. I'm just mad about the government. I'm like, well, I'm not COVID, I'm not the government. Pause. Have some restraint. Or maybe for you, it's when you discipline your kids. And instead of disciplining in anger, you take a breath and you ask God for some wisdom. Is there a relationship in your life with your brother, your sister, your parents, where you need to pray and say, God, would you give me some restraint? Because look at what it says in the second half of the verse. And whoever is wise is even-tempered. I know some people who just emote all over the place. And when you're around them, it's like you're walking on eggshells. Boy, I hope they don't get mad. Hope they don't blow up at me. Hope they don't criticize or get angry at me about this. Proverbs says the wise person is even-tempered. Here's a verse that I think can help you. It's certainly helped me. I'm not naturally even-tempered, I don't think. But it says, a gentle answer turns away wrath. A harsh word stirs up anger. That verse has helped me so much. Because when someone says something to me in a harsh tone, an angry tone, they bring a little energy, my natural reaction is to kind of bow up. But a gentle response is going to turn away wrath. A gentle response is going to throw some water on the anger fire. A harsh word is going to put a log on the anger fire. The writer of the Proverbs says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. We are responsible for our words. We are responsible for our stuff, not just our spouse's stuff, our kids' stuff, our parents' stuff. We're responsible for our stuff. Work on our own stuff, and our family will function better. Here's the second commitment to make for your family. Set some boundaries around other people's stuff. I mentioned my wife and I have 5 kids, and our youngest, our daughter Anna, is 3 years old. And she has picked up on some phrases that none of our other kids knew at her age. For example, 2 nights ago, we were in the car, and she was yelling at me from the back seat, I need Chipotle. I need Chipotle. I don't want it. I'm not in the mood for it. I need Chipotle. She's also learned the phrase, I hate you, which is embarrassing. She's picked this up from siblings who get angry at one another and things come out of their mouth. And so she knows, boy, if you're really upset about something, you can say that phrase. We had sent her over to the neighbor's house. It was like her first ever play date. It was the neighbor right next door. And she came home. We were so excited. We said, how did it go? And she said, good. And then she added, I didn't say I hate you. And I didn't say you're not my best friend. And we were thrilled. I mean, by the time you get to your fifth kid, the bar is so low. We were just like, wow, I'm so proud of you. Here's some sugar. Go watch a Marvel movie with your siblings. It's gonna be great, right? Now, what's normal for kids today? Here's some things that came to my mind. Bad language. I work out at a place where high school students are often working out and they don't listen to their music in their AirPods. Sometimes they just bring a Bluetooth speaker and blast it. And I cringe when I listen to some of the lyrics. Not just because of the bad language, but because of the glorifying of sin and how women are demeaned. And if I were to pull these high school students aside and said, hey, did you just hear what that song said? Half of them would go, no. One really even listening to the lyrics. The other half of them would go, yeah, but I mean, it's just kind of normal. Pornography is becoming sadly more normal. I was talking to a Christian college student who attends a Christian university. He said, most of my friends struggle with pornography. He said, I don't think their parents have ever talked to them about the dangers of it. I have worked with 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who are struggling to have intimacy in marriage. And I will discover that they have unrealistic expectations. They're having a hard time connecting in real life, in the real world. And they want their spouse to do things that their spouse is like, whoa, where are you even getting that from? And when you dig, you find that they've become addicted to pornography. And oftentimes it happened years before on their phone or their computer when they were at an age when they didn't have the foresight to recognize how this was going to affect their real life and their real relationships. Soft pornography, normal. Go on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you will see things that you shouldn't see. If you want to dig around, you can find some things that you really wouldn't want to see. Parents, do you know what your kids are looking at when they're scrolling through their phone? Do you know what they're listening to when they have their AirPods in? Do you know who they're hanging out with and where they're going and what they're doing? As parents, we have to know the answer to those questions. And I realize it's hard work. I get exhausted sometimes fighting over phones and turn your phone in and phone checks and all that kind of thing. Half the time I don't have the energy for it. But I do it because I love my kids. I'll hear teenagers sometimes and I'll be passing them in the hall or some other place and I'll just hear them say something like, oh, my parents are so strict. Oh, my parents are so strict. So-and-so's parents, they're super cool. They let them do like whatever they want to do. And what I want to say to those teenagers is, here's what you ought to be saying. You ought to be saying, thank you, Mom and Dad, for loving me enough to care about what I watch and what I listen to. Parents who don't care about what their kids are watching, what their kids are listening to, what their kids are doing or where they're going, they either don't know the dangers in the future or they simply don't care. The parents who set boundaries and hold their kids accountable do so out of love. Now, you might be a teenager and you might be thinking, yeah, but just a little bit. I mean, I even hear this from adults sometimes. Yeah, I mean, this movie, there's a couple really bad sexual scenes, but it's just a little bit. It's not a big deal. I don't think it's going to affect me. I know the music has some stuff, but it's just a little bit. It's not going to harm me. I was listening to a story about a mom whose teenage son was trying to convince her to let him watch an R-rated movie. And he's like, oh, there's just a couple bad scenes. It's not a big deal. It's not going to harm me, you know. And she said, sure, you can watch the movie. And her son was like, oh, okay. She said, in fact, let's go upstairs and make some brownies so you have some brownies to eat while you're watching this movie. Teenagers are like, man, my mom is so cool. So they go upstairs and they're stirring the brownie batter, and the mom goes outside of the house. And she comes back inside with a little bit of their dog's doo-doo. And she puts the dog's doo-doo just a little bit into the brownie batter. And her teenage son gets wide-eyed. He's like, Mom, that's disgusting. I'm not gonna eat those. She said, how come? It's just a little bit. You probably won't even taste it. I mean, the chocolate will kind of mix in there. You won't even be able to taste it. It's probably not gonna harm you. You're gonna be fine. What are you worried about? It's just a little bit. Mom of the year. Let me give you just a few suggestions for parents, and you can do with these what you like. But I would suggest having a regular phone check for your kids to look at what are they looking at, what are they listening to. You say, I don't need to do that. I trust my kids. I trust my kids as well. It's why I'm not afraid to do it. I don't expect to find anything bad. But here's what I know about myself. I have clicked on things that I shouldn't click on. Oftentimes, out of curiosity, I've clicked on something that I shouldn't have been looking at. And if I need accountability, everybody does. Every kid needs accountability. Every adult needs accountability. In fact, a phone is morally neutral. There's some great things on your phone and device. I've seen my son reading the Bible on his phone on the way to school. I was glad he had the phone. But our kids also need some wisdom as to how to navigate their phone and their device, because there's other things on that phone that can harm their future and hurt their soul. Here's the second suggestion. Have some screen time limitations. Kids were not wired and designed by God to spend hours of a day in front of a screen or device. But a screen or device is addicting. It was made to be addicting. Social media with likes and comments. Oh, did someone like my post? Did someone comment on my post? It was designed to be addictive. TikTok. It is so easy to just go to the next video, next 20-second video. We'll see if this does something. No, 5 seconds in, move on to the next one. It's meant to be addictive. I get a kick when I'll yell to my kids, it's dinner time, and they're playing video games in the basement. Dinner. Nothing. First 3 times, I don't even think they physically hear me. Maybe the 4th time I'll go, dinner. And then this is the response I get. Just a minute. 10 minutes later, I lose my ever-loving mind. I go running downstairs, and then all of a sudden it's throw in the controllers, turn off the TV, race upstairs. I'm like, this is so dysfunctional, but it's meant to be addictive. Do you have some screen time limitations for your kids? Parents, by the way, if you're going to do this, you'll have to have some screen time limitations for yourself. I was at a restaurant recently, and 4 guys, I think they were probably in their 80s, walked in, sat down for lunch, and spent the first 25 minutes on their phones. All 4 of them. I mean, I look over at the table, they're not talking, they're just like, scrolling through their phone. And then one of them be like, hey, watch this video on Facebook. And they're like, what? And then they watch the video and they're all chuckling and they go back to their phones. So kids, have some screen time limitations for your grandparents as well. We all need it. Here's the third one, and this is not even a suggestion, it's more just an affirmation. It's okay if your kids don't have a phone. I will talk to parents who say, oh man, I just feel so bad. My kid's the only one who doesn't have a phone. I should probably get a phone. That's not the reason to get a phone. The reason to get a phone is not because other kids have a phone and you think your kid should get a phone as well. You know your kid's personality. You know their temperament. You know when it's ready for them. You have to be the one who makes that decision. You're not crazy if your kids don't have Snapchat, TikTok, the YouTube app. You're simply a parent who sets some boundaries because you love your kids. Set some boundaries around other people's stuff. Here's the third commitment, and this is by far the most important. Put God first. In Joshua, again, he says this, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. What about in your house? When it comes to money, is God first? When it comes to your time, is God first? When it comes to the activities that you participate in and the entertainment choices that you make, is God first in those? When it comes to having a Christ-centered home and putting God first, here's a couple things that won't work. Legalism. Legalism is all do's and don'ts. Do this, don't do that. And Christianity becomes all about the rules. Here's the problem with that. Rules without relationship lead to rebellion. Oftentimes, without a tender relationship with God and with the parents, those rules will simply lead to rebellion. You've got to have both. Here's the second thing that won't work: lukewarm Christianity. Well, we're Christians, but we also do this. Well, we're Christians, but it's just really not a big part of our life. Kids will see right through that. Here's a sign that maybe lukewarm Christianity is creeping into your house. If you never say things like, "Oh, I was reading in the Bible today," or "Hey, listen to this worship song," or "What'd you think about church? Did you get anything out of the message?" That could be a sign. If you frequently choose things like youth sports over church, not saying you never miss church, I'm saying if you frequently choose something like youth sports over church, that could be a sign. My kids are heavily involved in sports. They have stuff going on every weekend. But we attend a church that has Saturday night services, Sunday morning services. Our Anoka campus has Sunday night services. We have online services. We have campuses all throughout the Twin Cities. If my kids are playing in the West Metro, we can go to Wayzata. If they're in the East Metro, we can go to Woodbury. If we don't make it to church, we're just not trying. Church for us is a non-negotiable. I've asked other parents about this who are older than myself. I remember asking our previous senior pastor, Bob Merritt, one time, I said, "What's your best parenting advice?" He said, "We didn't do everything right, but one thing we did do is we made sure our kids were in church." When I get up to speak on Saturday nights, I will often look out and I will see his adult children in church. And it started because of a commitment he made when they were kids. Why is this so important? Faith comes from hearing the word of God. That's how faith grows. How often is your family hearing the word of God? My son Jasper is 10 years old, and he's not normal in a good way, I would say. In fact, I walked downstairs at 6:30 a few weeks ago, and he was all dressed, ready to go for school, and he said to me, "Dad, I memorized Psalm 23. And I was in such a hurry. I was like, "Oh, cool, great." And I ran upstairs, and I got upstairs, and I thought, whoa, that's not normal. And so I went back down, and I said, "Son, I am so proud of you. And I hope that someday when you need those words, God will bring them to your mind. I hope that someday when you are walking through the valley of the shadow of death, that you will be reminded that God is with you and that his rod and his staff will comfort you." Now, I don't always catch Jasper reading the Bible at 6:30 in the morning. I've caught him playing Fortnite at the same time. But I was more proud of him that day than for any grade he's gotten or basket he's scored. Because as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. What if today you said, "You know what? Normal isn't working. What I see families doing normally, it's not working. I'm gonna work on my own stuff. I'm not just gonna point the finger at other people. I'm gonna work on my own stuff because I believe that's gonna make our family better. I'm not gonna be afraid to have some discipline and accountability and boundaries in our home. Even if that upsets the kids or makes them mad from time to time, because I know this is going to bring health later in life." And then what if you said, "We're gonna put God first. As for me and my house, when it comes to our time, when it comes to our money, when it comes to our activities and our entertainment, we will serve the Lord." I wanna close today a little differently. I wanna close and invite you to stand for prayer in just a moment. Just a moment, I'm gonna invite you to stand at all of our campuses, and I wanna pray a prayer over you. I wanna pray a prayer over every family in this church, that God would bless you, Not just your family right now, but bless you to the next generation, to bless your grandchildren, to bless your great-grandchildren and your great-great-great-grandchildren. The decisions that you make today for your family to serve the Lord would have a ripple effect for generations to come. Would you join me as we stand at all of our campuses and we close in prayer? God, I pray over every family that's with us today. God, I pray for your blessing for their family and for the next generation. To the third, to the fourth generation, God, that your hand, your blessing would be upon our families. God, for families that are hurting, I pray for your healing. For families that are struggling, I pray for your comfort and your forgiveness and your reconciliation. God, I pray for joy. I pray for love. I pray for understanding. God, I thank you for the parents here who sacrifice and work hard. I thank you for the kids who recognize that. I thank you for the grandparents that are engaged and come alongside. And God, I just continue to pray for our families as we declare that we will serve the Lord. As for our house, we will serve the Lord. I pray that you would bless every family here. I pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next weekend.